Welcome.
Welcome.
Welcome to First Parish Unitarian Universalist of Arlington.
We choose.
We choose.
We choose to be
A liberal religious community.
Welcoming.
Welcoming to all.
We encourage each other
on our spiritual journeys.
Support one another
Through the changes in our lives.
And challenge the excesses
and injustices of our time.
Called to love.
To love.
To love.
And upheld by joy.
We live our faith.
As we enter into this time of prayer, I invite you to settle into a comfortable position that allows your breath to flow freely through you. Notice the solid floor beneath your feet. Notice the firmness of the chair behind your back. As you breathe in, notice what is taking you away from this moment, right here, right now. As you breathe out, let it go. In this moment, there is no need to fix or solve anything. To the Spirit within and among us, we thank you for bringing us together in this time and space for reflection and companionship. In this time and in this place, help us to bring forth that which is most present upon our hearts, that which we can express, and that which is yearning for expression. To the Spirit of compassion, spread your wings over those who grieve. Be near to those who face illness in body, mind, or spirit. Hold those whose pain goes unseen or unnamed. Grant them rest where there has been strain, hope where there has been despair, and companionship on the road where the journey feels too heavy to walk alone. To the Spirit of solidarity, embrace those who are victims of injustice through organized efforts to silence their voices, their gender, their sexuality, their race. Draw them close. With them we stand, we march, we pray. To the Spirit of forgiveness, guide us into right relationship with ourselves and with others. Where we carry harm we have caused, grant us the courage to face it honestly, to make amends where possible, and to grow into wiser, more loving ways of being. Where we carry wounds inflicted by others, help us tend them with patience and truth. Lead us gently and steadily toward wholeness, accountability, and repair. Spirit of peace, may this time shape us, soften us, and strengthen us for the work of love that awaits us. I now invite you into 2 minutes of silence.
Good morning. Good morning. It is good to be with you this morning. As my colleague, Reverend Jennifer, mentioned, I come to you from being in Minneapolis with many of my UU colleagues, and I come to say that Unitarian Universalism, our faith, is alive and well. And I witnessed that in Minneapolis when so many of faith leaders dropped everything that we're doing to rush down to stand in solidarity and to witness. And some of them remained there on the ground, bearing witness and offering support. I find enormous comfort and confidence in knowing that our faith is so alive and well in these times. And I also will affirm that I am going to leave right after my sermon I live in Rhode Island where the storm is coming sooner, so I'm going to get myself safely home. So bear with me. I want to thank Reverend Jennifer for welcoming me this morning. Thank you. And for shepherding the service. Thank you so much. And thank you to the ushers and all those who are welcoming me here this morning. First Parish in Arlington is one of 46 Unitarian Universalist congregations around Greater Boston that are members of the Unitarian Universalist Urban Ministry. And your delegates to the urban ministry are Mary Glenn Vincennes, Robin Baker, and Mark Jacobson. And they help connect us and connect our work. And I want to thank them for their excellent ministry. And in particular, I'm just going to say Robin Baker has information about a concert that will be happening on our campus in the spring featuring the John Paul McGee Jazz Trio, and thinks that that might be of interest to you as a way to connect with us. So please see Robin to learn more about that. One of the reasons that I'm glad to be here is because this is an opportunity for me to thank you for the ways that you are part of the life of the urban ministry. I want to just acknowledge the ways you financially have supported our organization and our programs, including our youth program. I know that my colleagues Robert Jones and Karsten Cash were here in November to talk to you about our youth program, and I thank you for learning more about our work and for all the support that you give. It's very important to us to make our work happen. Supporters here include Mary Glenn Vincennes, Reverend Rosemary and Tom Smierzinski, Bruce Noth and Maeve Visser, Mark and Sharon Jacobson, William McCormick, Carolyn and John Hodges. I thank you for making our work possible. This morning, I especially want to lift up some appreciation for Mark Jacobson, who has been shepherding work around a business plan and activating our historic meeting house, which was recently renovated. He's actually a generational supporter. His mom is also a delegate from First Parish in Lexington, the only mother-son delegate duo. And yeah, that's pretty special. And his dad, Al Jacobson, was one of the first people that I met when I came to the urban ministry and was such a pillar and true blue champion. So I really appreciate that legacy. So it is good to be here in this moment, which is a hard and intense moment in our history. Daily, we are drowning in this cascade of headlines that frighten us and anger us before we even start the day. Who here can feel exhausted before you finish your cup of morning coffee? I am with you. And so this morning, we are going to focus on how to resist being drawn into chaos, about staying grounded in the midst of it. And we're going to again begin by breathing in and out. We can never do that too much. Paying attention to our nervous systems. And we are going to begin with a story. In March of 1861, Abraham Lincoln was inaugurated and became president when the nation was on the brink. At the heart of the stress fracture between the North and the South was enslavement. This conflict was intensifying as Southern slaveholders feared that Lincoln would end their dominion. For years, the dispute over enslavement had simmered. The South, no longer in step with the rest of a world that had deemed it immoral, protected the institution ferociously. Political solutions like the Missouri Compromise had tenuously held the nation together, but all that was coming undone with Lincoln's unlikely election. This gangly, rough-hewn president had a deep and abiding faith in the Constitution of our young country and in the central importance of its cohesion, and he waded into the center of a fiery cauldron. One of the first letters to be passed to him after he assumed the presidency was about the crisis at Fort Sumter in Charleston, South Carolina. This moment, we now know, was the spark that finally ignited the Civil War. Charleston was a hub for slave trading, and South Carolina the first state to secede. The politics of the slaveholding state was driven by the wishes of a group of wealthy enslavers known as the chivalry. Eric Larson, in his book, The Demon of Unrest, described events leading up to the attack on Fort Sumter, and he described the chivalry thus, quote, "The chivalry gave themselves military titles and favored elaborate uniforms. Their Southern Carolina standard-bearer, novelist William Gilmore Simms, wrote 82 novels in which chivalry and honor were central themes. Chivalry to him meant gallantry, stimulated by courage, warmed by enthusiasm, and refined by courtesy," end quote. And Larson continued, "The chivalry valued honor above all human traits and would happily kill to sustain it," end quote. Their fierce commitment to enslavement was propelled by, yes, economics and power, but also something even stronger, self-image. Southern enslavers needed to see enslavement as good because they wanted to be seen as good. This was an electric nerve running through the conflict. The thing the South most resented, Larson wrote, was the inalterable fact that the North, like the rest of the modern world, condemned slavery as a fundamental evil. In doing so, abolitionists and their allies impugned the honor of the entire Southern white race. For if slavery was indeed evil, then the South itself was evil, and its echelons of gentlemen, the chivalry, were nothing more than moral felons, end quote. This, Larson wrote, the South could not forgive. And it was in this charged atmosphere that Fort Sumter stood. When South Carolina seceded, its leaders deemed it an insult to their new government that federal troops remained. They demanded surrender. To hold the fort, the U.S. troops needed food. Supplies dwindled. The Confederate forces swelled. At stake was the nation, a continued fragile truce between North and South. At stake was war. In this fraught moment, Abraham Lincoln received the letter about Fort Sumter. The question before Lincoln was whether to fight, to send supplies, or to evacuate, each choice leading to a reaction of national proportion. He received it and he immediately paused. He pondered. Abraham Lincoln pondered. With tensions rising, with Confederate representatives knocking at his door, with streams of job seekers crowding into the White House, Lincoln considered. He stayed grounded and he considered. He asked his newly appointed cabinet members to weigh in. When most said abandon Fort Sumter, he continued pondering. Days passed, tensions rose, and Abraham Lincoln stood in the midst of it, considering the surest path forward. We know the ending of this story. In the short term, Sumter was lost. In the longer term, the Union held. In the much longer term, we are still grappling with the legacy of enslavement into today. When I read this story, I was struck by three things. One, the parallels with today's national landscape. Two, Lincoln's ability to resist the chaos and think clearly. And three, how challenging that is for us to do today with our 24-hour news cycle. Today we can hear echoes of that pre-Civil War time, the national polarization, the drive by a few elites at the top to grab and keep power, the anger, the high stakes. But there is also now the pace of it, news not delivered by horseback, but rapid-fire social media. We live in a maelstrom of distressing news, and maybe that is the point of it, to keep us distracted and exhausted. And so there is no more important matter before us than staying grounded in the midst of it. Staying grounded so we can prioritize, think clearly, and act from the strength at the center of ourselves. Our first task is bringing ourselves back to the center of ourselves. So we call on prayer, meditation, music, laughter. This last one, Abraham Lincoln used liberally in his storytelling. We may not feel that we have time for it with democracy at risk, but staying grounded is our first task of resistance. When we feel overwhelmed, we are called to slow down, step back, breathe, not to avoid what's happening, by no means, but to wisely respond to it. And when the dust of the chaos settles, we then stay grounded. We stay grounded in our heads, in our hearts, and in our gut. First, we stay grounded in our heads, in what we know. Over the past 5 years, since the killing of George Floyd, also in Minneapolis, many of us began waking up to the legacy of enslavement. Statistics on health, wealth, and educational disparities evidenced this legacy. According to the Boston Indicators Project, in 2022, white U.S. households had about 6 times the wealth of Black households. In Massachusetts, Black and Hispanic residents are far likelier to rely on Medicaid than whites, who more often have employer-sponsored health insurance. In Boston, life expectancy in Roxbury, an historically Black neighborhood, is 23 years less than it is 1 mile away in Back Bay. In the face of this knowledge, UUs hung Black Lives Matter banners on our meeting houses. We examined the history that we've inherited, in which criminal justice, healthcare, and housing systems conspire against people of color. We learned about how modern police forces and policing forces grew out of slave patrols to control communities of color. We held vigils, called for diversity, looked inward, and talked more seriously about reparations, as I know you are also doing. At the Urban Ministry in 2020, we made commitments for racial reckoning, promising to interrogate the history of First Church Roxbury, the congregation whose historic meeting house we inherited and now inhabit. Since then, we've worked in partnership with the African American community around us, searching archives for the names of people enslaved by white congregants, tracing their lives and lineage to name and honor them. In 2020, we committed to a vision in which all people have equitable access to resources and the ability to shape the future. And we deepened our commitment to our after-school programming, supporting high school students of color in becoming the city's next leaders and in reaching for their dreams. They face greater barriers than their suburban white peers. More students of color attend high-poverty schools with fewer resources. Wealth disparities mean that they need to borrow more money to go to college and then carry that debt into adulthood. And once they graduate, they continue to face inequity. According to the Center for Economic and Social Justice at Roxbury Community College, white workers in Greater Boston with a high school diploma make $2 more per hour than people of color with an associate's degree. We work persistently, insistently to ensure that these students have opportunity to thrive despite the barriers that they have inherited. Now comes this groundswell effort to turn back time, to cover over Black history, to halt progress in achieving basic fairness. Recently, an activist in Greater Boston spoke of how it's become more difficult in this chaos to focus on racial justice because there are so many issues to face, and yes, there are. But the work that we all took up to address the racist fissures in our nation is no less relevant today than it was in 2020. Indeed, it is at the heart of what is going on. According to the Boston Indicators Project, the federal budget cuts will further increase racial disparities. Quote, by cutting supports like Medicaid and SNAP and reshaping student aid, this bill not only worsens income inequality today, but sets in motion dynamics that will widen wealth disparities tomorrow, especially along racial lines, end quote. The end of the Civil War was not an end to racism. Pro-slavery Americans surrendered but were not transformed, and racism has shape-shifted through the last century, through lynchings and redlining and mass incarceration into today and into this landscape. Racism may not be the only thread running through today's struggle for the soul of our country, but it is most certainly a thick and tenacious one. And so we ground ourselves in the work that we have already undertaken, in what we've learned, in what we know. We stay the course. Second, we ground ourselves in our hearts by who we know and love. We ground ourselves in community. We center ourselves in real relationships, in real time, and how we're gathering here today in this faith community. Here is the power to create, to transform, to lift up. Consider how within this faith community we call one another forward for opportunities for activism, lend encouragement. Who here has been to a protest or written a letter or sent a postcard or learned about a particular social justice issue because of this faith community? It's a lot of hands. We did it because someone asked us to, invited us to, was willing to stand with us. We do together what would be harder to do alone. Let us feel the energy that pulses here in this beloved circle, and let that ground us. And let us also widen the circle. In Greater Boston, we remain deeply segregated by race and income. To be fully and powerfully grounded in what is happening today, we need to be proximate to those who are most directly impacted by both inherited and generational inequity, and by the cuts to SNAP and healthcare, for whom poverty is a daily reality. Brian Stevenson of the Equal Justice Initiative speaks of the power of proximity. Ultimately, he says, quote, what we do to get proximate to those who are disfavored, what we do to change narratives, what we do to stay hopeful, what we do that is inconvenient and uncomfortable can sometimes be the most meaningful thing that we do, end quote. At the Urban Ministry, one of our deepest values is partnership and proximity. We walk with Roxbury organizations. We listen to the Black community, which has a deep and lived experience in facing and overcoming oppression by weaponized institutions, something that some of us may be facing and fearing for the first time. When we reach out beyond our mostly white and comfortable communities, we ground ourselves in the power of relationship. When we get proximate to communities directly impacted by the pain that is being doled out, then the crisis we are in moves from an idea and into our hearts, and we move with greater assurance and urgency. And 3, we ground ourselves in our gut, in knowing who we are. Many of us are afraid of what the future holds. I'm afraid. Single-handedly, we can't control or predict what is to come, but every single one of us here has been through really hard times, and we survived it. For every one of us, there was a time we were overwhelmed or sorrowful or lost, and it was hard to see the way forward, but we found the way, and here we are. Every one of us has that glowing coal in our center that got us through. Eric Larson writes of Lincoln's Secretary of State, William Seward, in the early days of the new administration, when Seward tried to manipulate the new president about Fort Sumter in the midst of that cloud of stress. Seward, the more polished politician, was certain that he could push around this country lawyer, this man who'd suffered the early loss of his mother, whose father was barely literate, who grew up poor. What he did not recognize yet, Larson writes, is that there was steel in this Illinois lawyer. We have within us gifts of steel and light to the times that we are in. I'm going to lift a few of them up that you shared. Close friendships that helped me during pregnancy losses. Being practical. I had no choice. I was needed. Life had to move forward for my children. Determination. Meditation and friendship. I write fiction where the characters can show the meaning and resolution of hardship. It takes away the silence. My ancestors regularly visited me, sharing feelings with friends, looking at birds, trees, the moon, gathering with others to take resistance actions. Trying to experience my place in the wider web of nature, of friendship, of family, to be of use. And there are so many more among us. These are just some of the gifts that are right here, right now, in this time. There is a cloud of chaos and hurt that is happening right now. We have the power, though, to resist by what we know, by our connections, and by who we are, by our own journey. May we remember that we are enough, more than enough, for the times that we are in, and may we keep walking forward together in faith. In the words of the Reverend William Barber, forward together, not one step back. And may it be so, and amen.